What if the very tool designed to, well, empower your learning turned out to be the biggest disruptor to how we measure that learning? That's quite a thought, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah. And that paradox, that tension, sits right at the heart of today's deep dive.
That's right. Today, we're really digging into the fascinating, sometimes complex, and maybe even a little unsettling world of artificial intelligence in health professions education, or HPE, as it's often called.
Hmm.
Our goal is really to break down how AI is fundamentally reshaping the way we teach, how you learn, and maybe most critically, how we assess competence in these vital medical fields.
Yeah, and we've distilled insights from leading experts, drawing quite heavily from recent AME guides.
Okay.
These sources really shed light on AI's role in assessment within HPE, the broader ethical side of things, and even the sort of foundational research behind AI in medical education.
So if you're keen to quickly grasp AI's incredible potential, but also understand its inherent challenges and maybe explore the vital ethical questions we all face, then you're definitely in the right place. Our mission today is to ensure you walk away from this deep dive feeling genuinely well-informed and ready to engage thoughtfully with this really rapidly evolving topic. So let's jump in.
Okay, so in the world of education, there's this, timeless saying, assessment drives learning.
Mm-hmm. Heard that one.
Yeah, it basically means that the way we test you often dictates how you study, what you prioritize. And AI, particularly generative AI or Gen AI, has absolutely thrown a wrench into this.
It really has. It forces us to look at it from a completely new angle.
Exactly. And what truly, ignited this whole conversation, really catapulted AI into the public consciousness and got both learners and teachers excited, maybe a bit anxious too,
Right.
was the public release of ChatGPT 3.5. That was November 30, 2022. It really opened the floodgates.
It did. And while we'll talk broadly about AI, it's probably worth noting that most of the examples and discussions in our source material, they lean heavily on that category, generative AI.
That's a fair point. The initial reactions, well, you might expect them. A surge of concerns around plagiarism, cheating,
Yeah, the usual suspect.
the usual suspects. But as these models got better really fast, institutions quickly moved beyond just fear. They started to recognize AI's pretty profound ability to assist, in both formative and summative assessment.
So not just a threat, but maybe a tool.
Precisely. Our sources highlight what they call a deterministic realization. AI isn't just here to stay. Its power is advancing at an unprecedented, almost dizzying pace.
And this isn't just about AI being some new gadget, right? It's a fundamental shift. It means we can't just keep assessing competence the way we always have.
No, absolutely not. It's forcing a complete reevaluation, almost like renegotiating the educational contract.
Wow.
Yeah, the sources make it really clear. Our assessment methods need significant adjustment. Some might even need to be scrapped entirely.
Seriously, scrapped.
Yeah, and new ones will have to emerge. And this isn't like a one-time fix either. It's an ongoing dynamic evolution we have to keep adapting.
Okay, so maybe she should ground this a bit. What exactly is AI based on our source material? A simple definition.
Good idea. From the research, AI is defined as the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence.
Like what?
Well, such as visual perception, speech recognition, and decision-making. Those sorts of things.
Okay, that makes sense. And what's really fascinating here, I think, is how AI functions as this powerful analytical tool, especially with huge, complex data sets.
Exactly. Think about deep neural networks, or DNNs.
Right, DNN.
These are advanced AI systems kind of loosely modeled on how we think the human brain works, and they excel at finding hidden patterns in just massive amounts of data.
And that's where the medical applications come in.
Precisely. This is why they're behind these remarkable breakthroughs in computer vision. They're demonstrating superhuman diagnostic performance in fields like radiology, dermatology, pathology.
Superhuman.
Really? Well, yeah, in specific tasks. We're talking about AI detecting malignant melanoma or spotting microinvasion of lymph nodes, sometimes with greater accuracy than even experienced human experts.
Wow.
It really spotlights AI's capabilities far beyond just, writing an email or summarizing text.
Definitely puts it in perspective. Now, when it comes to how we humans are reacting to all this, well, our sources describe quite a spectrum, don't they?
They do. Everything from excessive enthusiasm to deep fear. And interestingly, both extremes, they can lead to misuse of these powerful tools.
That makes sense. You can be too eager or too scared.
Exactly. And it's important to acknowledge there are very valid reasons for caution, for some apprehension.
One of the big hurdles I've seen discussed is our tendency to anthropomorphize AI, to treat it like it's human.
Oh, absolutely. You see it all the time, right? Like on social media, people reacting to ChatGPT-4's voice saying it sounds flirty or female.
Yeah, I saw that.
But as our sources explain, this kind of misinterpretation, it overlooks the basic design goal, which is just to create user-friendly interfaces. And frankly, it can also reveal our own personal biases.
Good point.
We really need to keep emphasizing that AI systems, they are not human. They don't have gender or race or feelings. They're sophisticated machines built to process information, period.
Right. Not HAL 9000 just yet.
Not yet, thankfully. And beyond that sort of conceptual confusion, there are really legitimate, tangible concerns for both learners and educators.
Like what specifically?
Well, learners worry about potentially losing essential skills if they rely too much on AI. Or that genuine anxiety when an AI detector wrongly flags their original work as AI generated. That's a real fear.
I can imagine. And for educators.
Similar worries, maybe from a different angle. Fears of inappropriate AI use in assessments. Faculty may be worrying about being replaced by AI down the line.
Is that realistic?
Well, it's a fear. And just the sheer overwhelming pace of change, all the new tools popping up, not to mention the big complexities around data sharing, surveillance, security, it's a lot.
It really is. But the good news in all this, I suppose, is that we're not starting completely from scratch, are we? There are pedagogical models out there already.
That's a crucial point. Sound pedagogical models and frameworks, they already exist for incorporating technology, and that includes AI. Grounding our approach in these established frameworks can really help overcome some of the misconceptions and fears.
Okay, so let's talk about those. What are some key frameworks?
Right. Let's look at two important ones. First, there's TPEC. That stands for Technology, Pedagogy, Content, and Knowledge.
GP. Okay.
This framework helps educators examine how they teach. That's the pedagogy, and what they teach the content, and then think critically about why a technology like AI can actually enhance the learning. It's a solid way to conceptualize training educators to use AI in a pedagogically smart way.
So it's about why and how, not just the tech itself.
Precisely. And then there's another one called PICRAT. This gives us a really useful lens to view AI integration from both sides, the learners and the educators.
PICRAT. Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. For the learner, it's PIC, passive, interactive, and creative.
PIC?
Right. Passive is where AI might work behind the scenes, maybe analyzing study patterns to adjust question difficulty, or just tracking time spent on a module.
Okay, subtle stuff.
Interactive is where the learner learns with the AI, maybe through a sort of Socratic dialogue assessment that really probes their understanding deeply.
Like a back and forth.
Exactly. And creative is where the learner actively uses AI to generate something new, like using it to get sophisticated feedback on their writing or even designing new learning materials themselves.
Okay, passive, interactive, creative. Got it. What about the educator side?
That's the RAT part of PICRAT, replacement, amplification, and transformation.
RAT.
Right. Replacement is pretty straightforward. AI takes over tasks humans used to do manually, generating multiple choice questions, creating virtual patient scenarios.
Automating things.
Yeah. Amplification is where AI improves existing processes. Think about providing personalized feedback to every student in a huge class, something impossible for one person, but AI can amplify the educator's reach.
Makes sense. And transformation.
That's where AI enables entirely new ways of doing things that just weren't possible before, like analyzing massive amounts of learner data to create truly personalized learning pathways tailored to each individual.
Wow, that sounds powerful.
It is. So if we connect this all back to the bigger picture, understanding and using models like TPAC and PICRAT allows educators to comfortably integrate AI into their existing evidence-based teaching.
So it becomes less scary, more structured.
Exactly. It shifts AI from just being this disruptive tech tool to becoming a truly pedagogical tool, one that can profoundly enhance how we teach and, crucially, how we assess learning.
Now, in health professions education specifically, there seems to be this growing trend towards more flexible curricula, moving away from rigid structures, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's about accommodating diverse learning paces, different preferences, making education more adaptive, more learner-centered.
And this is where personalized assessment, powered by AI, really shines.
Precisely. AI can deliver, real-time feedback and competency evaluations. It can enable on-demand assessments.
So students test when they're ready.
Essentially, yes. This allows learners to progress through their training at their own speed, demonstrating readiness based on actual demonstrated competency, not just because they spent a certain amount of time in a course.
That seems much more meaningful.
It is. And it has the added benefit of potentially minimizing educator bias in feedback, making it more objective.
So does this mean AI could even play a bigger role in, say, certification? Making sure people are ready for practice?
Absolutely. AI-driven assessments can be really effective in preparing learners for those big milestones, phase completion, certification, by offering frequent, specific, competency-based evaluations that mirror real-world clinical skills.
It's about ensuring they're truly ready.
Exactly. Ready for professional practice.
But I guess even with all these pluses, personalization must have its limits, or things we need to watch out for.
It certainly does. If you focus only on very rigidly defined competencies, you might sometimes overlook the nuances of learning, that holistic professional development piece.
The softer skills, maybe?
Perhaps. And critically, as our sources emphasize, these practices must always be grounded in theory, not driven by the desire to use technology just for the sake of using the latest shiny toy.
Good point. And then there are the ethical concerns too, right? Data collection, bias.
Huge concerns. Data protection, algorithm bias, and how learning pathways are personalized, how resources get allocated. We'll definitely dig more into ethics later, but it's a major consideration with personalization.
Okay, so on the flip side of personalization, we have standardized assessments.
Yeah.
Things like the USMLE exam. They're foundational in HPE, aren't they?
Absolutely foundational. They ensure fair, consistent, and comparable evaluations across different institutions. They're crucial for certifying that graduates meet the necessary competencies for patient safety and, frankly, for maintaining public trust.
So the big challenge then is finding the balance between that personalized flexibility and the uniformity needed for standardization, especially with this idea of precision education emerging.
That's the tightrope we're walking, and when you try to integrate Gen AI into that standardization process, you hit immediate hurdles.
Oh,
Well, for instance, having Gen AI just churn out questions for a high-stakes test like the USMLE, those questions often lack the rigorous psychometric validation that traditionally developed questions go through.
Could you quickly unpack psychometric validation for us?
Sure. It's basically the scientific process to make sure an exam is fair, consistent, and actually measures what it claims to measure. It involves a lot of statistical analysis to check reliability and validity.
Okay, so AI-generated questions might not meet that standard yet.
Not consistently, no. And the black box nature of many Gen AI algorithms, meaning we don't always know exactly how they arrive at an answer, makes it really hard to ensure they consistently adhere to tested educational standards and avoid unintended biases.
Right, the bias issue again.
Exactly. Our sources are pretty clear. Current large language models, or LLMs, are not yet sufficiently accurate to consistently generate reliable, high-stakes assessment items without human oversight.
But surely there's some promise for AI in making standardized tests better.
Oh, absolutely. There's significant potential, especially for improving the standardization of clinical exams, like OSCEs, those practical skills exams.
Oh, so.
Well, AI can use speech-to-text transcription to analyze the entire interaction between the student and a standardized patient, comparing it against a detailed rubric. This could virtually eliminate the variability you get between different human raters.
Ah, so more consistent scoring.
Much more consistent scoring. And fine-tuning these LLMs specifically for scoring tasks can improve reliability even further.
So here's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? This idea of the human in the loop.
Yes, that's the crucial takeaway right now. Our sources strongly emphasize that until these LLMs consistently demonstrate much better reliability than trained human raters, human oversight remains absolutely essential.
For both creating the questions and scoring them.
Both. To ensure quality, fairness, and accuracy. So, for now, perhaps the most appropriate and impactful role for AI in assessment is actually in those low-stakes, formative assessments and adaptive learning environments.
Where the pressure isn't quite so high.
Exactly, where personalization can really effectively support the learning process itself without the immediate high-stakes implications of certification or failure hanging over the learner's head.
Let's switch gears a bit and talk about the traditional essay. For, well, centuries, really, the take-home essay has been a big deal in health professions education, right?
A cornerstone, absolutely. It was always seen as a way to foster that high-level thinking, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, aligning with ideas like constructivism or Bloom's taxonomy, a key gauge for academic work.
from applying to med school all the way to complex research papers.
Exactly. And then, boom, November 2022, ChatGPT 3.5 arrives.
The game changer.
Yeah, because it dramatically exposed the essay's biggest weakness, the potential for mostly undetectable cheating. Our sources put it bluntly, LLMs have forever changed the take-home assignment.
Forever changed. Wow. So what were the initial reactions from institutions?
Predictably, maybe frequently negative, we saw outright bans on AI tools.
Just forbid it entirely.
Yeah. Or mandates for rough drafts written by hand, trying to go back in time almost, and a huge rush towards using AI detection software.
Did those detectors work?
Often not reliably, no. And it led to assignments being unfairly failed sometimes. But in all that panic, a core point often got missed.
Which was?
That the aim is not to write the essay, and it never has been. The fundamental goal is always to gauge learning. The essay was just the vehicle.
Ah, right. So this creates a pretty big problem for educators, doesn't it? Kind of a twofold problem.
Exactly. First, AI, in its current form, arguably renders the standard isolated essay irrelevant for genuinely gauging learning if a student can just generate it.
Okay.
And second, just banning or minimizing AI use in essays. Well, that doesn't prepare learners for the real world where they will encounter and be expected to use AI tools competently and ethically.
It's like trying to ignore the internet existed back in the day.
Precisely. It's not sustainable. So the solutions have to move beyond just blocking AI.
Okay, so what are the solutions then?
Well, there are some technological approaches being developed, like closed writing tools that try to track AI usage during the writing process.
Like proctoring software for writing.
Sort of, but they're still really in their infancy. They can be expensive, potentially easy to trick, and frankly, they step into a murky area ethically regarding surveillance. Institutions need to be really careful there.
So technology might not be the magic bullet. What's the alternative?
The real path forward seems to be a pedagogical one. Instead of fighting AI, we need to embrace it strategically. We need to rethink the essay, not as this single, standalone, and complete product, but maybe as one aspect of a broader assessment process.
Like part of something bigger.
Yeah. Imagine the learner more like a director. They use multimodal AI research and input systems. Maybe text generators, image creators, data analyzers to create a range of multimodal AI outputs.
Like text, video,
audio. Exactly, all designed to demonstrate that they've genuinely grappled with the problem or answered the question. The traditional text essay just becomes one component of that larger demonstration of learning.
That's a really different way of thinking about it. Why is this shift so important?
Well, because traditional methods like multiple choice questions or short answer tests, they often struggle to measure that higher order thinking analysis, application, evaluation, creation.
Right. They test recall more than deep understanding sometimes.
Often, yes. And they frequently fail to reflect authentic, real-life clinical scenarios where information is messy and decisions are complex.
So when we're designing these new kinds of assessments for the AI age, what should the guiding principles be?
The key ideas are, first, minimize opportunities for its unethical use, and second, leverage its affordances. What can AI help with?
Okay.
These assessments need to require learners to actually figure out what information and skills they need to solve a problem. Just like in the real world, they shouldn't just be spoon-fed.
Mimic reality more closely.
Exactly. They should help learners demonstrate discipline-specific behaviors and connect new stuff to what they already know. This aligns really nicely with established ideas like constructivism and universal design for learning.
Can you give us some concrete examples of what these alternative assessments might look like?
Sure. Think about an annotated portfolio. A student compiles work, and GenAI could help summarize related research, provide feedback on drafts, even proofread.
Okay, AI as an assistant.
Right. Or virtual patients. GenAI can create incredibly dynamic scenarios, realistic conversations, and offer individualized formative feedback right away. Dartmouth's Patient Actor app is a great example mentioned in the sources.
An interactive simulation.
Yeah, or even something visual, like creating an infographic or a scientific poster. GenAI could help generate outlines, suggest design layouts, create relevant images, and give feedback on the clarity and impact of the final product.
So, lots of possibilities. What are the best practices for integrating AI into these assessments effectively?
The key is to make them mirror real-world scenarios as much as possible, foster practical skills, and really emphasize that higher-order thinking, the stuff GenAI can't easily do on its own yet.
Focus on human cognitive skills.
Exactly. We also need to be crystal clear about how and when Gen AI can be used for a specific assignment. Is it okay for brainstorming? As an editor? As a tutor? Define the boundaries.
Set clear rules.
Absolutely. And use rubrics and examples that specifically include Gen AI-specific criteria. Emphasize transparency by requiring documentation of AI usage. Learners need to show how they used it. And crucially, teach them to critically evaluate the AI's output. Don't just copy-paste.
Right, that critical evaluation piece seems vital.
It is. There's even a framework mentioned, how to use AI responsibly every time, that can help guide this process.
But these sound like they might be more work to set up than a standard essay or MCQ test.
They definitely can be. Our sources acknowledge they are often time-intensive to design and implement. You might also face some initial learner resistance. Why can't I just write an essay?
Yeah, change is hard.
It is. And there are equity and access issues, too, especially with paid versions of more powerful AI tools. Not everyone has the same access. Educators also need to be ready to explain the value and the limitations of using Gen AI this way to their institutions and colleagues.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how AI is changing assessment. But what about its potential to directly support the learning process itself? Can AI act as a kind of tutor?
Absolutely. That's another major role emerging. AI as a personalized tutor. The problem it helps solve is pretty significant.
Which is?
Well, producing fair, standardized, and personalized formative assessment, the kind that really helps you learn along the way, is incredibly resource-intensive for human educators. It takes so much time.
Right. Hard to give detailed feedback to every single student constantly.
Exactly. And that's where intelligent tutoring systems, or IT, powered by AI, come in. They offer a powerful way towards truly personalized learning and adaptability, tailoring assessments and learning experiences to individual needs.
What are the main advantages of these AI tutors?
Well, there are quite a few. They can offer personalized learning activities, give real-time feedback as you go. They can promote self-regulated learning skills, even predict performance to some extent.
Help students manage their own learning better.
Yes. They can reduce what educators call extraneous load by simplifying complex concepts, maybe breaking them down differently for different learners. They can guide learners through data-based decision-making exercises, and they can even be used to help manage peer feedback in really large classes.
That's quite a list. What does this actually look like in practice for, say, a medical student? Can you give some examples?
Sure. Virtual patient simulations are a great example. Things like the virtual operative assistant or the AI patient actor.
I mentioned those briefly.
Right. They're programmed to simulate really authentic patient-clinician interactions. They can guide learners through interactive questioning to develop clinical reasoning, communication skills.
And give feedback.
Yeah, immediate AI-driven feedback based on analyzing the transcript of the interaction against a specific rubric. And for educators who aren't coding experts, you can use custom GPTs to create surprisingly simple but effective IT.
Custom GPTs.
Yeah, you can tailor them to offer interactive dialogue, provide a user-friendly interface, help clarify complex topics. They're customizable, which can help reduce bias or those weird AI hallucinations, and they can offer open access solutions too.
Sounds like a potential game changer for scaling personalized learning.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing AI tutors aren't perfect. What are the limitations?
Definitely not perfect. Like any simulation, these AI tutors and virtual patients, they don't yet fully replicate the deep nuances of human-patient interactions. You know, the subtle emotions, the complex social cues, the sheer unpredictability of real people.
The human element.
Exactly. So they should mainly be used for building foundational skills, practicing specific techniques. They shouldn't replace essential hands-on clinical experience with real patients.
Makes sense.
There are also considerations around learner safety, data privacy, what happens to the interaction data, and just the emotional adaptability of learners to these systems. Some might find it great, others may be impersonal. And AI-powered peer assessment, while promising, is still very much in its early stages.
Okay, that provides good balance. Now let's flip this idea. What about AI acting not as the tutor, but as a kind of learner alongside the student? That sounds interesting.
It is an intriguing concept. In this role, AI can function as what Vygotsky called a more knowledgeable other.
A more knowledgeable other.
Yeah, someone or something that can help scaffold learning. AI can help frame and extend debate within student groups, for instance. It can help learners recognize dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling when new information clashes with what you thought you knew, prompting them to dig deeper and refine their explanations.
So it's not just giving answers, but provoking thought.
Exactly. Provoking and structuring thought. Beyond the traditional tutor role, think about how AI can act as this knowledgeable other.
Oh.
Well, a chatbot could quickly generate comprehensive study guides from lecture notes, analyze and summarize really long research papers, or create intricate concept maps visualizing connections between ideas.
Useful study tools.
Very. AI can also enhance collaboration, maybe on shared whiteboards or streaming platforms, by organizing brainstorming sessions or prompting further discussion points. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Go on.
AI has the ability to ask and respond to intelligent questions about a text, or it could even be the simulated patient in a practice consultation, and then provide critical, constructive feedback on the student's communication skills right afterwards.
Wow. Instant feedback on bedside manner, essentially.
Yeah. Another innovative idea mentioned is using AI large language models to stage debates on complex clinical cases. Learners could then analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the arguments generated by different AI personas.
That forces critical thinking. So what are the best practices for using AI in this kind of learner or collaborator role?
The absolute key, whether AI is a tutor or a learner, is training learners and faculty in its sensible use and being appropriately critical of the information it provides.
Don't just trust it.
Never just trust it implicitly. Research has shown models like ChatGPT can actually perform surprisingly well on high-stakes exams, like the USMLE, even providing explanations for answers. But that human critical evaluation is always needed. You have to verify.
And the limitations when AI is acting as this learner alongside students.
The main limitation, and it's a huge one for healthcare education, is the absolute necessity for parallel human interaction. You still need real teachers, real fellow learners, and critically real patients, because ultimately healthcare is practiced on and with people.
The human connection is irreplaceable.
Irreplaceable. There's also a risk, perhaps, of learners developing bad habits in consultations if they only practice with AI, or maybe failing to develop truly sharp, incisive thinking, because, let's face it, a chatbot might be easier to ignore than a professor or a real physician pushing back.
Good point. You can just close the chat window.
Exactly. The human element provides accountability and depth that AI, at least currently, can't fully replicate. So, moving into the ethical dimension, AI undeniably introduces and frankly amplifies a whole host of complex ethical issues in health professions education.
Amplifies them.
Yeah, existing issues might become more pronounced and new ones emerge. And educators often find themselves unprepared for the nuances involved. Plus, existing university policies. They may just not be specific enough for HPE's unique context, or they simply can't keep pace with how fast AI is advancing.
It's a moving target. One area that seems really controversial is what our sources call the source information dilemma. Can you explain that?
Right. This refers to GenAI's reliance on basically large-scale harvesting of publicly accessible material, text, images, data, often without acknowledgement or compensation to the original creators.
So scraping the internet, essentially.
Pretty much. And it's notoriously difficult, often impossible, to trace the specific original sources used to train many large language models. This puts institutions in a tricky position. They could find themselves relying on systems that are built on practices that some would argue are inherently unethical.
That's a tough spot. And then there's the massive issue of bias.
Huge issue. Critical concern. In AI systems, a person often gets reduced to what's called a data subject. You're just a collection of data points, not a whole person in the human sense.
Dehumanizing almost.
It can feel that way.
Right.
And this raw data is what's used to train the algorithms. The problem explodes if that training data is heavily dominated by or significantly underrepresents certain demographics, whether it's race, gender, culture, disabilities.
Because the AI learns those imbalances.
Exactly. The algorithms will inevitably reflect those societal biases present in the data. Our sources point out that stereotypes embedded in how data is labeled can lead to inherently racist, sexist, or otherwise prejudiced algorithms. They even cite examples where cultural bias isn't immediately obvious. Like, ChatGPT might apply a kind of self-censorship because it's programmed to be reluctant to offend certain groups, but this very reluctance can inadvertently skew its output or avoid important, sensitive topics.
So how does this kind of built-in bias actually impact things in health professions education?
Right.
Where does it show up?
Its impact can be really far-reaching and sometimes subtle. It could influence decisions in recruitment, who gets promoted, who gets awards or internships. It can shape how courses are designed, what topics are covered, even the kinds of questions that appear on exams.
So it can perpetuate existing inequities.
Precisely. The primary way to mitigate this, according to the research, is to strive for sufficient data diversity when training these AI models. Use data that reflects the real world's complexity.
Easier said than done, I imagine.
Very. And where training data isn't widely representative for certain groups, that limitation needs to be clearly stated up front. Transparency is key. Tools also exist, like one called Probast, that can help researchers check for data and algorithm bias. And encouraging open access data gathered with proper consent can also help build more equitable AI systems over time.
Okay. What about faculty members using AI? Are there specific ethical guidelines or concerns for them, maybe different from learners?
Absolutely. Just like learners, faculty using Gen AI maybe to help create course materials or draft feedback requires clear transparency. Perhaps even offering an opt-out option for learners or other faculty who might have concerns.
Opt-out. Interesting.
Yeah. And learner privacy is another massive concern. Learner data, performance data, assessment responses, written work is an incredibly attractive source for training AI models.
Because it's rich contextual data.
Exactly. Think about using natural language processing to organize narrative assessment data or AI trying to predict future student performance. But the unconsented use of learner data used as training data for the models is a really pressing ethical issue.
So how do institutions prevent that?
Mitigation strategies include using institutional licenses for AI tools that guarantee data privacy, using APIs that don't retain data for training, or ensuring faculty know how to disable training features within the AI tools they use.
Okay. What else for faculty?
Critically, any Gen AI outputs used for grading or providing feedback should be verified for accuracy, appropriateness, and adherence to established guidelines. Human oversight is vital.
Especially in clinical settings.
Even more crucial when dealing with clinical work, absolutely. Accuracy there directly impacts patient care. And finally, existing appeals processes within institutions need to be updated to specifically address situations where inappropriate or biased AI usage might be the cause of a complaint.
Got it. Now, we touched on AI detection software earlier. You said it wasn't very reliable. Can you expand on that? Why should institutions avoid it?
Our sources are pretty strong on this point. AI detectors should be avoided, primarily because they're neither accurate nor reliable. They produce both false positives and false negatives.
Meaning they wrongly accuse students or fail to catch actual AI use?
Both, yes. Especially when learners use simple obfuscation techniques to slightly alter the AI-generated text. Detectors also show a tendency to disadvantage people writing in their second language, flagging their original work as AI-generated more often simply due to stylistic differences.
That's a serious equity concern.
Huge. And perhaps most importantly, trying to enforce a blanket prohibition on AI use through detection would actively discourage the use of an important new tool that could have major benefits for learning when used appropriately.
So if detection isn't the answer, what are the necessary considerations for managing learner use of AI ethically and effectively?
Well, first and foremost, institutions absolutely need clear, well-communicated policies regarding appropriate AI usage. What's allowed, what isn't, for what tasks.
Setting expectations.
Exactly. Educators should then actively work to create a shared understanding with learners. This means defining AI's capabilities and limitations honestly and modeling accountable ethical use themselves.
Sidewaying by example.
Yes. We also need to guard against learners simply gaming the system, figuring out AI's quirks and targeting those, rather than engaging in genuine problem solving. And access equity is vital. Meaning institutions must ensure all learners have fair access to the necessary training, software licenses, and hardware required to use these tools effectively and ethically. It can't become a tool only for the privileged.
Good point.
And finally, educators need to be mindful of fostering dependency and over-reliance. Assessments should balance AI use with scenarios where AI systems might not be available, preparing learners for the full spectrum of real-world situations.
This really raises a huge question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Given how fast AI is moving and the absolute need to direct this change effectively, how can health professions education possibly navigate these incredibly complex ethical issues proactively? It feels like trying to build the plane while flying it.
It really does feel that way sometimes, and successfully navigating this future really hinges on comprehensive faculty and staff development. It's absolutely crucial.
Why so critical?
Well, our sources emphasize that faculty development in AI-supported assessment is essential for change management and technology acceptance, especially because, historically, many educators haven't received much formal development specifically in technology-enhanced learning. There's often a knowledge gap.
And that Sam Altman quote really drives this home, right? The CEO of OpenAI saying, these are the stupidest models we'll ever be.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder of the continuous, almost relentless pace of AI's evolution. It demands ongoing learning, ongoing training, ongoing adaptation from everyone involved in education.
So how can we structure that faculty development effectively? You mentioned the TPAC framework earlier. Does that apply here?
Absolutely. TPAC provides a fantastic structure for building faculty competency with AI and assessment we need to develop.
Okay, let's break it down.
First, technological knowledge, TK. Just the basics, how to use tools like ChatGPT for assessment tasks, understanding their benefits, limitations, how to write effective prompts, that's prompt engineering.
Just the how-to.
Then, technological content knowledge, TCK. This is about applying those tools effectively within a specific clinical subject area. How do you use an LLM productively when teaching neurology, for example?
Making it discipline-specific.
Right. Next is technological pedagogical knowledge, TPK. This is about using LLMs to genuinely enhance teaching approaches to assessment. How can AI enable more multimodal, authentic, or precision assessment strategies? It's about the teaching method.
Connecting tech to pedagogy.
Exactly. And finally, the holy grail, technological pedagogical content knowledge, PPCK. This integrates everything. Using LLMs within, say, a neurology context specifically to enhance pedagogically sound assessment strategies for that subject.
Putting it all together for a specific teaching scenario.
Precisely. It's about that deep integration.
It sounds like institutions really need to be out front on this, not just reacting.
They absolutely have to be proactive. Institutions must ensure access to Gen AI tools for assessment, both for faculty and learners. Otherwise, any policies or training are pretty meaningless if people can't actually use the tools.
Right. Access is fundamental.
And crucially, being explicit about Gen AI use is very important. Institutions and faculty need to model ethical and practical usage openly. No hiding it.
So forget the idea of a single one-off training workshop on AI, right?
Yeah.
This needs to be continuous.
Completely forget it. Single-session approaches are totally insufficient for something evolving this fast. Institutions should be thinking about things like microlearning updates, short, frequent bursts of information.
Bite-sized learning.
Yeah. Fostering vibrant communities of practice where educators can share what's working, what isn't, and learn from each other's experiments is key.
Peer learning.
Exactly. And actively modeling Gen AI use in other faculty development offerings, not just siloed AI workshops. Sharing successes and challenges openly really helps to demystify Gen AI. And this support needs to happen at multiple levels.
What do you mean by multiple levels?
Support is needed at the micro level, individual faculty and staff, at the meso level, the institution itself providing resources and policies, and at the macro level, guidance and standards from regulatory and professional bodies. It takes a village.
It really does. Now, as we talk about all this AI use by faculty, by learners, there's a big practical question. Acknowledgement and citing AI. How are we supposed to handle that? It seems messy.
It is messy and definitely still evolving. As AI becomes more integrated into how people work, the need for clear guidelines on acknowledging and citing AI systems is becoming urgent. Institutions are grappling with this right now.
What are the main viewpoints on this?
Broadly, there are two opposing perspectives emerging. One side argues that AI-created content should be cited, much like you'd cite any author, partly to avoid plagiarism since the AI is drawing on existing material.
Treat it like a source.
Kind of. The other perspective argues that AI isn't human. It can't be an author in the traditional sense. It can't take responsibility for the content. And its output isn't always perfectly recreatable or publicly available like a published article.
So you can't verify it the same way.
Exactly. That's the argument.
So given those different views, what are the current practical guidelines people should follow?
Well, many institutions are starting to develop their own specific policies, so checking locally is important. But looking at academic publishers like Elsevier, for example, they often suggest disclosing AI use rather than citing it as an author.
Disclosing how?
Typically in a separate paragraph, you'd state that you used AI, maybe which tool, the date or version, the extent to which you used it, the specific task it performed, such as editing, brainstorming, generating text, and crucially, describe the human editing or review involved.
So transparency is key.
Yes, and using precise language. Words like created, enhanced, edited, reviewed, or assisted are helpful. The APA style guide also have a format example, something like OpenAI 2024, ChatGPT, July 6 version, large language model, https.chat.openai.com/chat.
Okay, that's concrete.
It is, but it's vital to remember these guidelines are still evolving. This is a rapidly changing space, so staying informed through institutional updates and publisher guidelines is paramount.
So pulling this all together, what does this entire landscape really mean for how institutions need to adapt? It feels like a huge undertaking to integrate AI ethically and effectively into HPE.
It truly is a monumental undertaking navigating a genuinely new frontier. This deep dive, we've covered a huge range of issues, haven't we? From pedagogical theory and how humans react to all the different assessment types, those thorny ethical dilemmas, and even the practicalities of how you cite an AI.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
And we've really aimed to give you, the listener, a full realistic picture of AI's profound impacts, both the incredible positives and the significant challenges.
It definitely makes you think. It almost inevitably brings us back to that famous question Alan Turing posed decades ago. Can machines think?
It does. And AI's rapid advances are pushing that question way beyond just philosophy now. It's becoming almost an existential question for us.
How so?
Well, what happens down the line when AI systems themselves maybe start to propose their own ethical frameworks? Frameworks that might challenge our fundamental human-centric ethical principles. This isn't science fiction anymore. It's a conversation that's rapidly approaching reality.
That's a truly provocative thought to end on.
Indeed. Ultimately, this deep dive really encourages you, our listener, to try and embrace a pragmatic view of AI, one that accepts the uncertainty, the imperfection, maybe with a sense of openness rather than just fear.
And to think about our own roles.
Absolutely. We challenge you to consider your own role, whether as an educator, a learner, a clinician, or just an interested observer, in helping to direct this profound shift. How can we ensure HPE assessment remains relevant, fair, and effective? And to just keep exploring this crucial, fascinating, and rapidly evolving intersection of AI and education.